they wouldn't be able to kind of work it out. And so that's what I did, whether it was licensing to get a person flown in last minute to do a job, or if it was literally keeping them there and getting them in a spot where they're comfortable. And a lot of times, basically, I would over or undersell and over deliver, which you've heard, I'm sure, many times. And that was, you're going into a horrible place. It's going to be dark and dingy. It's going to be terrible. And they would go there and say, this isn't so bad. It isn't great, but it's not as bad as you described. And that was sort of my trick. And I used a lot of anesthetist nurses mostly. That was the majority of the people I used, which were CRNAs or nurse anesthetists. And they were used much more than anesthesiologists because they're cheaper, about half the price.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to share. We got another great one. From boredom, partying, being pulled out of schools to success on his own terms. We have Darton Case with us today, and this is a different show. This is a different format. It's a little bit risque and really, really funny. Darton's going to talk about how you handle your 21st and 22nd years and how that matters, investing in yourself early. We're going to get into character traits of entrepreneurs, the path to entrepreneurship from the former king, former chairman of the global board of the Entrepreneurs Organization. Welcome to the show and welcome to the Edge of Excellence. Darton Case, thank you so much for making time, coming off the boat, exiting the beach, making time to be on the show today. Welcome to the Edge of Excellence.
Thanks, Matt. Good to be here.
We'll see about that. We will see about that. Well, before we're going to get into your life story today, Darton. We're going to tell a lot of jokes. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to jab like we used to. And we were on the board of the largest entrepreneur group in the world. Darton Case was global chairman of the Entrepreneurs Organization, spanning, I think, something like 60 countries and probably around 20,000 members, traveling all over the place, eating cheeseburgers at Hard Rock Cafe in every country because he's from Michigan, and I don't think ever had a passport before he was global chairman, but he was the global chairman. He has raised wonderful children. One's graduating from the University of Miami last week. Way to go, Taryn. Congratulations on your graduation. The other one goes to a different college, which we'll get into, and going to be a veterinarian. Successful, wonderful, amazing children. He's built wonderful friendships all around the world, inside his business and outside his business. All this while being married to a wonderful, beautiful, sweet, yet a little bit crazy, just a little bit crazy, like me. We're two peas in a pod. Scared of snakes woman for 28 years. And Darton, before we get into all that stuff, I got to ask you, what is your definition of excellence?
Excellence is, in your mind, what it should be. And what I mean by that is define your own excellence, make it your own. And in my particular case, excellence is doing what you say and following through. And really, it's about designing a life that fits you like a glove. And sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't. But it's basically a journey of that. And so excellence can mean so many different things to different people. And I think the important thing is that it marries up with what your idea of excellence is.
So really, for you, excellence is integrity. You said, do what you say, follow through, integrity, do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. Creating designing a life that matches who you are and what you want to be, integrity. So for you, it's just living integrity.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Wow. Well, we're going to get back into your life, raising camels in the western part of Michigan in the snow, And we're going to get into all the things you did in high school with that wonderful family of yours. And I've met them all. But before we're going to get to 31 years of growing this wonderful business, Dart Appraisal, that does people haven't, it's not like a household name, but everybody's used Dart Appraisal because it operates in all the different states. And when you're buying a home, you don't know who your appraiser is, but it's probably Dart Appraisal. And exiting the day-to-day while still being CEO, which we actually call chairman of the board, but you want to keep that CEO title, that's fine with us. And relocating to Florida, shout out to Florida, the shitty California. If you like the ocean, Florida, the shitty California. So you've done all these wonderful things. Yeah, welcome to the show, Darton.
Yeah,
welcome to the show.
So.
It's a show for 20-somethings to figure out what to do for a living. It's a show to expose them to things like appraisals. They don't know what that is. Who even does? It's a show to expose them to entrepreneurs, but yet at the same time, we're going to have a good time. And I've known you for a long time, Darton Case, and I've known your wife for a long time. And I would say you're in my top 5 best friends, and so is your wife. So we're going to talk some trash. We might talk about big, slithery snakes that your wife cannot stand, which you got to give me some credit for that Detroit Lions logo I had my son drop in about 2 minutes with a giant snake on it when the Lions were going to the Super Bowl, and they won the Super Bowl, didn't they?
No, they did not.
Of course they did it. They're the Detroit Lions. But let's go back to the start when you first became a Detroit Lions fan. God, I love this.
God.
Shout out to Michigan. If you're in Michigan right now, listen to this. Darton lives all over Michigan. He lives in, what's that nice town? Birmingham, Michigan. He lives where those beautiful 3 lakes are near Grand Rapids. What's that lake place called?
Blue Lake.
Blue Lake, awesome lake, great place to go for 4th of July. One of my top 2 4th of Julys, Blue Lake and Kansas City, best places you can go for 4th of July. He's from all around Michigan, and he loves the Detroit Lions. And what's your baseball team called?
Tigers.
Nobody cares. All right, so what was life like for you before you had those beautiful daughters? Remember when my son and your daughter got in like a fist fight at Blue Lake?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I do.
They were throwing like lawn darts or something at each other when they were like 9 years old. I was hoping they'd get married. They still can. What was life like in high school for you? Were you kicking ass? Were you driving speedboats? Were you building things that float, big docks that are 2 stories with Coors Light all over the place? What was life like in high school? Where'd you go? What were you doing?
I went to Clarkston High, which is about 30 minutes north of Detroit. It's a fairly, I wouldn't say it's rural, but it's suburban deal. We had 1,600 kids in our high school, so it wasn't a small school, but it wasn't a huge school. I'd say it's probably
how big were Taryn and Delaney's high school?
Yeah, theirs is a little bigger than that, by a little bit, about 2,000 kids.
Okay.
In theirs in Birmingham. Well, we pulled in from a big area. I mean, it was, I grew up on 20 acres, had dirt bikes.
So you had people coming to your high school from 30 miles away?
I had people, no, I would say they lived probably up to 15 miles away. Okay. Yeah, it was a big radius. They've since built a new high school because the area has grown.
And if you're listening right now in the car on 1.5 speed, this is going to get a lot better. Don't you worry. So,
I don't know about that.
What were you doing in high school? I mean, I know you didn't know even what appraisals were, so you couldn't have been in the on trajectory to own an appraisal company. Were you kicking ass? Were you trying to get great grades, or were you really focused on your future, or were you like a lot of people just kind of going along?
I was never really into school. School to me was pretty boring. Probably be like you listening to this podcast with me talking at this point. That would be my teacher. It was never something. I continue to get comments from the teachers saying he has a lack of lack of patience, lack of. They just basically said I want to be in school, which I didn't want to be in school. But I did have fun, and I attended. I did everything I was supposed to do to get my degree, but barely. And high school was one of these things where I had a lot of friends. We went to toga parties when toga parties were cool. I don't know if those are coming back.
They still are. We just don't get invited. Bet you Taryn and Delaney go to toga parties.
Yeah. We, I grew up with 4 brothers and sisters, and I'm the middle. So I got to see, older brothers, younger brother, older sister, younger sister. So I was definitely in a mix, and the age difference is pretty substantial. I mean, my sister is 6 years older than me, and my little brother is 10 years younger than me. So
your
it's
sister
a 16-year
is 6D or 16?
Six years older than me. So Today she's 62. My brother's 60. I'm 56. My sister's 54. My little brother is 46.
Okay, so let's just pause. Let's pause a little bit on this whole high school thing. So your teachers are saying you got a lack of patience, probably a lack of follow through, lack of work ethic. You were bored, weren't you?
I was bored, yeah, but I played the drums. I had a great time in band. I guess they call them geeks now, but I had a good time. And we had a little junior jazz band, and I was in the marching band for a little bit. So I did some of that. As I mentioned, I was riding dirt bikes. We had a lot of property. I built my own dirt track in the backyard. I worked, at the grocery store down the street, and it was called A&P, which is based out of the East Coast, but that was kind of like Albertsons on the West Coast, or Kroger, in the Midwest, and did that. So, I was busy.
I think it's interesting, though, because I think the same thing happens to our friend Mike Cato. He's episode number 1, first episode I ever did. I think his kid Vincent is bored, and so he doesn't get great grades. I got great grades, but I was bored, and I did bad things like breaking into cars and stealing car stereos and all sorts of bad shit that I used to do out of boredom. Vincent gets in trouble out of boredom. So you're playing the drums, you're having a good time playing the drums, you're riding your dirt bikes, building tracks, you're bored with school. And if you're listening right now, it's okay to be bored with school as long as you know you're bored with school. So you got out of high school, you were working hard, you had a work ethic, and you've always, I just can't believe you considered yourself a geek, because you're anything but a geek. Like you're the most non-geeky person I know. So you worked really, really hard on a bunch of different things that weren't really your grades, but you still went to college. Why did you go to college?
Yeah, so I looked at a map of the United States, and I always enjoyed skiing. I was a big skier. We had a ski hill near my home, which was very big. How
the hell did you get into Colorado State with horrible grades?
Well, I didn't have horrible grades. I was just more of a B, C plus student kind of deal. I think they wanted my out-of-state money. I couldn't get into Colorado, where my sister's kids go at the time. I did apply, and they said no. So I did go to Colorado State, and didn't really know much about it. Except for geographically. And I even got that wrong, because when I went there, I realized that you had to actually drive an hour south and then go to the mountains. So it was this big L. Yeah. And
you're totally 2 hours away from the closest ski area.
Oh, yeah. And we Vail, which took 3.5 hours, and it made no sense. And after my first semester of skiing a lot, it cost a lot of money, and it was 3.5 hours to get there and back. And if there's a snowstorm, it could take 5 hours or more. It really and I joined a fraternity, SAE. It turned into, I'm not going back skiing because we're busy here.
I'm doing the secret handshake. I can't get my fingers to do the secret handshake. It's not so secret when everybody knows it.
Well,
okay, so wait, let's just, so you were bored with school, you're playing drums, you're a dork, you're riding motorcycles, but you think you know how to ski, which is always so funny for those East Coasters. And you pick a place that you think's near a ski area, but you suck as a student, so you don't realize you're nowhere near the ski area.
Right.
And you go to Colorado State and join SAE, which is the same fraternity my brother-in-law joined at the same school, as you recall, the year they got kicked off campus for shooting people with, was that the one? No, it was the other SAE at UCLA where they were shooting people with BB guns out of the windows. And I'm not a big fan of fraternities right now because I got a goddaughter, and this whole dress up the cooler and fill it with booze to go to the formal thing kind of makes me want to puke. But you went to Colorado State and you're leaving every weekend to go skiing. Are you about to tell us that you, before there was even the internet, there was no internet at the time, were you living in Vail and the ski areas and not even attending class?
No, no. As I mentioned, I went there a lot. I didn't join the fraternity till the second semester. We had a 2-semester school, and in the spring.
Semester. Yeah.
Yes, semester. And I joined SAE in the spring. So in the fall, that's when I did the skiing, joined a fraternity. I was a pledge. We had to do a lot of things pledges do. And I was busy. You know, we had formals, we had events, we had to clean the house, we had to paint the house, we had to do all these things. And I got immersed in it and wildly enjoyed it. In fact, I enjoyed it too much because my first semester I had a 1.75 GPA. My second semester I had a 1.96, I believe it was. So a combined of like 1.87.
Wow.
Which I had to put on a brick when I was a pledge, my GPA, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I did go to Colorado State my second year. Believe it or not, my dad got a letter. It said, your son is doing horrible. And they actually didn't kick me out. They were putting me on probation. And he said, you're out. We're not going to do this anymore. And so what he said was, you better pick a school in Michigan, where obviously my parents and I lived. And I decided that I would cut a deal with my dad. So I found an SAE house at a school called Ferris State University up in Big Rapids, Michigan. And actually went up there to check out their fraternity house, which is basically a small house. It was not like my house at Colorado State, which held 50 plus people. And I went there, said, this is perfect. Went back to the house and said to my dad, I said, I'll cut you a deal. If I get a 3.0 or more at Ferris State, can I go back to Colorado State? And he started laughing so hard that he literally, I'm not kidding you, fell on the ground and said, this is the craziest thing. Sure. Yeah, you got it. You can go back to Colorado State if you get a 3.0.
So first of all, if you're listening right now, togas are, if you watch Animal House, you'll see what a toga is. Nobody had toga parties in college. I don't know what the hell's going on in Michigan. Where were the parents? In high school. Nobody had toga parties in high school. That was a college thing. So you already live in the college lifestyle when you're in high school, you're going to school. Then you go to Colorado and you're screwing around, living the fraternity lifestyle. Then you go to another school just to be in a fraternity. Then you end up back at Colorado State. When the hell did you get serious? So by the way, if you're listening right now and you're just at the point where life's turning around for you and you're wondering, wow, could I have like 3 gigantic boats parked in Florida one day? Could I have private plane? Could I have a beautiful wife who's afraid of snakes?
I don't have a private plane.
But you could have one.
I don't have 3 big boats either. I have one big boat.
Oh, no, you sold your boats right before the hurricane, didn't you? You had to be. Oh, wait a second. We do not correct the announcer. Where's my yellow flag? There it is. You get a yellow card. I thought you had 3 boats. You sold them before the hurricane, though. Didn't you sell your boats right before the hurricane? Okay, so don't correct the announcer. You did have 3 boats. Now you have 1 giant boat. I don't know. I've never been to Florida, the shitty California. I haven't been there because I don't go to places like Florida where they lock people up for free speech and make people think like drones. But anyway, so if you're sitting there listening right now thinking, could I take the abuse of Matt Stewart? Probably not, but he's given me a lot. No, you're thinking, wow, I haven't done a lot with my life. I got a 1.875 in college. I wonder if I'll ever be successful. Will I ever own a business? Will I ever have a wonderful family? Will I ever have perfect daughters and a perfect wife? Will I have 5 houses or however many houses? Don't correct me. You got 2 at the lake, 1 in Barrington or Bermuda or whatever the hell that place is in Michigan, and then 1 in Florida. So there's at least 4. Am I going to be able to not to run a business for 31 years and for 10 of it, let someone else step in as president and kick all sorts of ass? Well, we got proof right here. So let's get to what the hell happened. When did you start? I mean, I didn't even know most of this shit. I thought you were like a normal college student, did really well and kicked ass and started a business because you were kicking ass. So were you just screwing around all of college? When did all of a sudden you get your shit together?
And don't forget Johnny Quest parties that I went to at the SE house at Colorado State. Those were parties that started at 7 a.m. because we had to go to a 1 o'clock football game.
Oh, God
It was
forbid,
kind
forget
of
that.
like a toga thing.
Did
kind
you
of a
graduate
toga.
from college?
I did graduate. I graduated. The entire college was 4.5 years, believe it or not. And a year of that was at Ferris. So I went to Colorado State 3.5 years and Ferris for one.
And did you graduate with anything of a respectable GPA, or did you screw off?
I had a 2.9 at the end, which is pretty hard to do when you start with in the ones.
I had a 2.9 at the end, and I started with like a 2. Don't take calculus 2 your first semester of college when you come from New Mexico because you think you're a math whiz. That hurts. That hurt me a whole lot. Okay, so you got a 2.9
you're gonna like
GPA.
this, Matt. You're gonna like this. One of the F, because I did have an F in the beginning, was real estate appraisal.
Okay, so you got a 2.9
so that is funny, isn't it?
Yeah. So you're skiing, you're partying, you're doing horrible things. And by the way, if you're in a fraternity right now, shape up, fraternity boys. Yeah. I'm hearing all sorts of stuff about you guys. Quit being, what's it called when you are kind of abusive of women? What's that word?
Hazing.
Not hazing, not monogamy. There's a word.
Oh, you're talking about with girls.
Like it's what Donald Trump does. What is that word?
Oh boy, here it goes.
Not monogamous. Misogyny. Quit being a misogynist. Oh my God, should we edit that? No, we're keeping that in. We're keeping it in.
So Matt likes stereotypes. That's why, in the 175 podcasts before me, or 200 or whatever he's got, maybe it's 300, he does like to embellish things because fraternity members, not frat. We don't call them frat, by the way. Oh. There's a lot of leadership that flows through.
You're right. I'm just talking about this whole cooler thing. My beautiful goddaughter's decorating a cooler to fill with booze to take to a party so she can get drunk at a hotel. Doesn't sound like a recipe for success. Sounds like misogyny and misogynistic behavior to me. And I don't like it, Darton. But let's just talk for a second in reality. We're not editing any of this shit. We're going with the flow. Did you have jobs in college? Did you do any, like this whole podcast is about get a job, kick ass, do more than just be in a fraternity. Did you do any of that, or you're just partying? In the summers, because, we get out in April and then you didn't start back up till late August. So I had, 3-4 months. So I did work with my father. He stuck me in his finance department at his company, which was horrible. And I drove him to work. I did these weird accounting jobs in his company, and then I would get back in his car and we would go home. And that would be about a 12-hour day. And don't you have a finance degree?
No, I have a social sciences degree. Because remember, I got out in 4.5 years.
Almost the same.
That's what I had to use to stick all these credits in to get them worth something.
Okay, so you're probably a D and I on the DISC score, right? You're
100, 0.
Yeah, 100 D, 100 I, 0 C, 0 S. Very similar to me. I've got a 5S though. Okay, so we don't do so. And if you don't know what DISC is, it's in like the first 5 episodes. Check it out. Everybody should know their DISC score. Then you know what not to do. And me and Darton should not follow rules, as you can tell by this podcast. Yeah. We should not be in any surgery, banking, numbers thing, exact sciences. People be dying if we're a dentist. We'd kill people as a dentist because we're not following the rules. Just, we don't even know what to do.
Rules as much as it is just the details,
Details,
we hire good people to do the details.
Yeah. We can rally the troops, but we can't follow the details. All right. So you got a social science degree. You're working in finance. What kind of business did your dad have?
My dad had a property management company that owned hotels, resorts, and he had a finance group in there. I wish I would have been in a different group, like operations or something, but that wasn't my choice.
Yeah.
Anyway, I did that for 2 or 3 years. 1 year I did landscaping, which was horrible. I'd rather go to an office and have a job that I didn't like in air conditioning than sitting outside weed whacking for, 7 hours or 10 hours, whatever it was.
Okay. So you're not focused on separating yourself, which you should be if you're listening right now. Separating yourself is a really good idea. You're not focused on building your resume, which, hey, if you're listening right now, building a resume is a good idea. You're not focused on getting ahead early, like retirement planning, rule of 72, make your deposit early and you get interest early. You're not thinking about any of that. So if you're listening right now and you're new to excellence, it can work out. Darton's kicking all sorts of ass, having a lot of fun, taking names. And again, shout out to Heather Case. If you like nice purses, check out Heather Case's closet. I can't, there's got to be new shelves. If you like Gucci and Chanel, check out Heather Case's closet. By the way, I need to get some Mother's Day presents and some birthday presents for my wife. Your wife won't even notice them. Just take them, sell them to me. I'll send you some cash. So you got out of college, and what did you do when you got out of college?
Oh, wow. So I got out, and it was the Iraq War. I think it was right when this happened, right when I graduated in like December of 90, which was the four and a half year mark for me, because I graduated from high school in 86. And so we're in this war. So there was a kind of a wet blanket on the economy. And I just started talking to people and working networks and so forth. And I was able to find a person that said, I think we could possibly get you in this place. It's headhunting for anesthesiologists and anesthetist nurses. I didn't even really know. I kind of knew what that was, but not really.
The shot people,
22.
if you're listening right now and you like shots, become an anesthesiologist or anesthetist nurse.
Right. And so these were hard words for me to say. And I went and interviewed, and they said, well, we typically don't hire someone right out of college, but we actually hired this guy who was someone that they'd hired a year before me, and he worked out really well. So he said, well, we'll take a risk on you, and we'll hire you. And I said, great. What do I do? And so I got there, and it was basically on the phone,
all
10,
commission.
12 hours.
It was all commission, wasn't it?
No, I had a base, but it was probably 25, 30,000. But
which was,
I did
that was a lot
well.
of money back then. That's a pretty good base.
I guess. Yeah.
40 grand was all the money when I got out of school 4 years after you. So 30 grand base plus commission during a Gulf War. And again, we might be coming up on this similar situation. Housing prices are coming down. Car prices, thank God, are coming down. Unemployment was too low. It's going up a little bit. We might be looking at this in a year or two where people listening to the show might be facing kind of a rough economy. You got to think out of the box. You don't even know what headhunting is. Explain to everybody what headhunting is. And you have a base salary usually in headhunting. You get a commission based on placements, and you can explain what that is. And not normally are you focused on one exact role like anesthesiologists and anesthetist nurses, which are the people that knock you out when you have surgery. They put the spinal tap in. They put the drugs in the IV. It's a very stressful job. My father-in-law actually was an anesthesiologist and couldn't take it. Well, didn't want to deal with it anymore and became an eye surgeon because it's just so stressful. If you screw up, people are dying because you put too much medicine in them. But what is a headhunter, and what did you do right out of college as a headhunter?
Yeah, so I worked in a smoking office, by the way. Back then, you could smoke it. I didn't smoke. I never smoked, but people smoked in my office. So every day I went home, my clothes smelled like an ashtray. I was sick a lot because of that.
Wow. Maybe that's why they outlawed smoking in offices.
Yeah.
22-year-old kids
in a few years,
are getting lung cancer.
Why.
Yeah, okay.
So it was one of these deals where you worked the phone and you called on hospitals to see when their anesthesiologist or anesthetist nurse was going on vacation, and you would put a person in for that 1 or 2 weeks. or 3 weeks, or if they had an opening, which was most of the volume that we did. And that meant that in inner city hospitals, like Kaiser Permanente in the West Coast and or DC Medical Center in DC, these were hospitals at the time that they called gun and knife clubs, and they basically were very dangerous. And they couldn't keep anesthesiologists and anesthetist nurses there full time. So we put people in those jobs, and sometimes they'd be there for years and making good money. And my job was to keep both sides happy. I was a middleman, and that's when I really realized this is what I'm good at. I'm good at keeping both sides, keeping that agreement between both sides accurate and consistent, and making them want me as a conduit, because together, without me, they really couldn't find each other, and or even if they could find each other, they wouldn't be able to kind of work it out. And so that's what I did, whether it was licensing to get a person flown in last minute to do a job, or if it was literally keeping them there and getting them in a spot where they're comfortable. And a lot of times, basically, I would over or undersell and over deliver, which you've heard, I'm sure, many times. And that was, you're going into a horrible place. It's going to be dark and dingy. It's going to be terrible. And they would go there and say, this isn't so bad. It isn't great, but it's not as bad as you described. And that was sort of my trick. And I used a lot of anesthetist nurses mostly. That was the majority of the people I used, which were CRNAs or nurse anesthetists. And they were used much more than anesthesiologists because they're cheaper, about half the price. There were more.
Stop for a second, because you just went completely crazy. By the way, kids, if you're listening, Delaney, Taryn, get your dad talking about anesthesiology, and he goes, it's like you almost get as excited about anesthesiology as you do about the silver bullet. Coors Light, shout out to Coors Light from Golden, Colorado, and well stocked at Blue Lake, on the largest dock at Blue Lake. It is filled and built on Coors Light. So headhunters, what you're saying is they find clients. They find people that are looking for employees. So you're cold calling a lot of times, which is a tough thing to do. Your cold calling means they're not waiting for your call. You're breaking through to people that probably don't want to talk to you. So you're cold calling, you're using interpersonal skills. Again, DISC, you want to be a high I. If you're in sales, you want to be a high D so you can close deals and push and fight through. You want to be that influencer so you can take a DISC score to see if, headhunting might be great. Nicole McMacken, episode number 2 of this podcast, owns a headhunting firm as well, technology headhunting. So you're cold calling, you're using your interpersonal skills, you're using your drive, and you're slowly finding out you're good at sales. You're slowly finding out you're a deal guy, so to speak. You're finding out that your problem-solving skills, getting licenses, doing this communication thing, bridging the gap is coming in handy. So you're kind of flowering all of a sudden. And you talked a little bit about integrity. That's your definition of excellence. You're doing what you say. You're following through. You're under-promising and over-delivering. So you're finding out, hey, this integrity. And by the way, I found out what integrity was in business too. Customers like, you have the most integrity of anybody I've ever met. Did you see my lights just came out? Woohoo! You can see me now. Welcome to video. I'm in a rental house. It's not my fault. I don't care enough to go get the plug for my light because I'm a DI. We don't pay attention to detail. I'm like fucking, got to take that F-bomb out. I've filmed quite a few podcasts from this miserable location, and I'm a DI because I don't pay attention to those details. Other people are like, oh my God, look at him. Can't even see his body. So you're flowering in this job that you never even heard of before. They don't hire people that that are straight out of college, but they must be good at finding people that have sales potential. What was the company called, by the way?
American Anesthesia.
American? How'd you find it?
Like I said, I was networking through a friend of a friend, and they said, why don't you try this place? They didn't have a job opening. I just went there, and they said, well, because we had hired a person that was younger, that didn't have experience, and he's working out, we'll try you too.
or they didn't even know what they were doing.
No.
Okay.
Well,
How many months did it take you to land this job? How long were you going? Searching
it was quick. I think it was within 60 or 90 days of
And how many
looking for a
places
job.
had you applied during this recession, Gulf War starting?
I wasn't very good at it, interviewing. We did that at the last semester of school. I tried, but the problem was I was from Michigan, and I was interviewing for jobs in Colorado, and I didn't really want to stay in Colorado. I wanted to go back to Michigan, so that kind of screwed up my interviewing skills, quite frankly.
Where was this job?
I was new at. This was right by my house, my parents' house. It was probably 20 minutes away. Yeah. It was back in Michigan.
Okay.
Yep.
So you're doing the headhunting, and when did the most important thing that ever happened in your life happen? When you met Heather and she reined you in and helped control the toga-wearing beast. Did that happen while you were in this job? Because I thought she was right there at the beginning of Dart Appraisal, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was. So my dad started Dart Appraisal. Oh boy, that's a long story. Are we ready for that piece?
Well, okay. So you're working as a headhunter. How long were you a headhunter?
I was a headhunter for 4 years.
4 years. And so you developed sales skills. You furthered your interpersonal skills. You furthered your sense of integrity. You're growing and you're realizing this is my thing. And then where'd you go next?
Yeah, so I was very good at what we did. But again, I was working in a smoking office and I was sick a lot. So that was sort of the underbelly here that was negative in my experience. But I loved what I did. In fact, at one point, I'd asked them for a second phone to be put on my desk because I was on hold so much to get a hold of these doctors that were in surgery. Yeah. Well, I was there. What else am I going to do? So my average hold time would be over 15 or 20 minutes until I could get through to somebody. So I didn't want to waste time by just being on hold. So I'd make another call at the same time. It got a little interesting. Someone picked up on call one or call, my first phone versus the second phone. So I had to play around with that, but I got that under control for a while. I also had a cell phone that after hours I would start using, which was, believe it or not, I had a bag phone. And my average bill was over $1,200 a month. And I paid that out of my own.
So you're successful because you're figuring out new and creative ways to work hard. And my friend Scott says, hey, there's always someone smarter than you. There's always someone better than you. Make sure there's no one that works harder than you. So no one else is thinking to add a second phone. No one else is getting a cell phone and paying $1,200 a month. And that was back then. That's like $4,000 a month in today's dollars.
It was a lot.
I mean, literally it's $3,000. It's $3,000 a month for a cell phone. So you're just working all the time, crushing it. And you're just getting the base, or you're making a lot of money on commission.
I think I was making anywhere between 80 and 120,000 at this point. Year number 2.
And that's at like 25 years old.
No, I was 23.
So
I graduated when I was 22.
So that's the equivalent of, money's, if we do 3% interest, that's the equivalent of making about $300,000 a year today.
It was a lot. They bought me a BMW of my color choice, put it on the lease for the whole company. They'd never done that before.
I'm going to guess, and this is going to really piss me off. It was light blue.
No, it's British green with tan interior.
Oh, okay. Because you're a light color guy. You're a light color car guy, which I don't even understand.
Yes, because you're saying because I'm an old person that lives in Florida.
No, you had an M5 and it was light blue. You had a Raptor. It was like a light gray. Like my cars are dark and awesome, black or dark gray. Yours are like these fly away, can't even see them in the snow colors. Okay, so they bought you a cool BMW, not an M like what I would drive, but a cool BMW because you're not an M guy anymore, which is lame. And why did you leave? Why you leave this?
I don't think they had M's. By the way, I don't think they had M's back then. If they did, it was like the main, like M8 or whatever, the big one, or M1.
No, they had
Are
M's,
you sure?
Mr. Do your research on cars, Mr. BMW lover. I am 100% positive.
Yeah, no, this is
63 CSI M version. Boom, you should have gotten that. Cheapo company. So why'd you leave this smoking environment? And we're not talking weed, by the way. He is from Colorado. This is before weed had been invented. This is before vape pens. This is straight up old fashioned cigarettes, probably filterless. Why'd you leave that place?
All right, so I have to go back in 1990 or 1989 when I was still in college. My father, remember, I worked with him when I was in college. Their company unfortunately did not make it, so they had to unwind from that. And he developed a mortgage company. He started a mortgage company called Oakland Mortgage, which, by the way, is where Heather started working.
Oh, that's right.
So my friends started working at Oakland Mortgage, and my best friends
You have broken
from high school.
every single rule of the podcast. You didn't do shit in high school. You screwed around. You were a misogynistic pig fraternity guy, like all of them.
I think so.
Don't you even try. You need another yellow card. Yellow card. You're close to ejection. Yellow card. Then you figure out your dream, which everybody's listening to the podcast right now going, oh my God, he found it. Am I good at sales? Should I go take the DIS test? Should I look into doing cold calling and busting my ass? Well, I want to work so hard that I get myself my own cell phone and pay my own bills. And then boom, you're fishing off the company pier. You're fishing off the company pier. Do not do that. That is now labeled as sexual harassment. Please do not fish off the company pier. So your dad started was in the property management company, instead decided to start a mortgage company, which is one of the dirtiest industries in the world. And he's in the mortgage industry, and yes, you know it is. Do not even frown at my generalizations. He starts a mortgage company. A mortgage company, if you're listening right now, again, you got to be great at sales. You're financing people's homes. You're figuring out loans. You got people that process paperwork that are detail oriented. And you got people that get clients. So his dad's got a mortgage business and he decides to start. You can't do that. You can't have a mortgage business and an appraisal company.
So he decided in 1993 to start. Well, he actually came to me and said, hey, I want to start an appraisal company for our firm. And
wait a second. Another yellow card. Isn't that illegal?
No.
Is it illegal
today? No, because it'd be different shareholders. It actually is legal today. It shouldn't be. But back then there weren't rules, but we also had different shareholder basically formations. So it wasn't exactly the same in regards to who
an appraisal company figures out the value of a building, and a mortgage company loans money based on the value of a building, and a loan officer in a mortgage company wants that building to be worth as much as possible so they can get a loan that covers the cost of purchase. And so you guys have an appraisal company over here. That's conflict of interest, isn't it?
Here's how it worked. He calls me, says, we want to start this company. It's going to be called Dart Appraisal. And I said, what are you talking about? That's my name. It was kind of a weird call. And I said, why don't you call it red or blue or green appraisal? Why does it have to have my name? And so we went back and forth for a month or two. And I finally agreed that if we use a symbol, like the actual dart, and not my face or my name or what have you, then I would be okay with that. And so we went forward with that, but I was still a headhunter. I was still there at that job for another year. He had put a person in that job that was basically an administrator, and they did appraisals for Oakland Mortgage. That was it. And so I finally got to a point where I was ready for a change. So I ended up leaving American Anesthesia and basically going over to Dart in 1994, which had been going for a little over a year. And so that's what I did. So that's where I also met Heather. She was a processor for Oakland Mortgage. And
she is detail oriented.
Oh, yeah.
So, and that happens a lot if you're listening right now and you're an asshole like me, which evidently I am based on this podcast, or you're a rule breaker like Darton and evidently his dad. There's sales jobs might be great for you, these customer facing jobs, but you might have a hard time with the processing, which is basically making sure everything's perfect. And the only thing Darton and I have ever done perfect is our marriage. Other than that, we're pretty much imperfect people. So you see Heather, she's the exact opposite of you. Opposites attract. And you guys decide to get married right away, and then you have to come over and work with her. I mean, what happened?
No, because I got there in 94. We were married in 96. We didn't even start going out with each other till 95, but we hung around similar friends. And oh, by the way, when I first got there, it was pretty obnoxious because something you said about loan officers wanting a certain value. And I literally had to block my desk for guys coming over the desk willing to kill me if our appraisal didn't come in for the same number they were looking for. And it got really interesting and scary at the same time. And that's when I realized I need to protect these appraisers and protect these loan officers that are basically out of control. And so I became again a middleman. So I took some of the pieces out of that first job, the first real job I had as a headhunter, and said, these are actually some of I didn't know this, but they kind of developed when I ended up going over to Dart Appraisal. Is I'm doing some of the same things. It's a lot of phone stuff. You got to convince appraisers into believing in you. They got to trust you. And then you've got to convince loan officers or mortgage companies or credit unions or banks to rely on you too. Now, at this point, in the very beginning, we only had one client. It's called Oakland Mortgage, doing probably somewhere 20, 30 mortgages a month. And I remember my dad came in after literally 6 or 7 months of me being there, and he said, "When are you going to get a second client? I mean, you've only got us." And I looked at, talk about a yellow card. I had a yellow legal pad with at least 4 pages of things that were not correct. They were broke. I'm like, this isn't even working for you guys. I got this problem. I got this problem. I got this problem. I got to fix this before I go to client 2, because until I get this right.
Okay, and let's pause. That's a really good lesson. So, sometimes people start franchises. Before you start a franchise, you have to perfect the first store or the first restaurant or the first whatever. So you move into this new business, appraisals, and appraisals, basically you need people that do appraisals, and people that do appraisals are going to be detail oriented. They're going to be fact finders. They're going to be ethical. There's a big ethical issue. They're going to have to sign off on it. And they're
very independent. Yes.
And they're going to be independent too. And they're in trouble if they make big mistakes or if they falsify records. So you, as an appraisal company, have to find trustworthy people that also trust you, ethical people that trust in your ethics, people that are detail oriented and are going to go find the comparative sales and figure out actual square footage by measuring exactly, not trusting the plans, not trusting the permits that are filed with the city. Like my house is filed as smaller than it actually is with the city for some reason. They got to go figure that stuff out. So an appraiser spends a few hours at a house figuring out exactly what the structure of the house is. They don't inspect it. They don't see if it's in good shape or bad shape. They figure out the square footage, the size, the quality of build, the quality of the interior compared to other sales that are similar, other sales in the city, figure out the market. So you're building on your strengths, finding those people and building a business of those people. But before you can go to another client, before you spread out to another state, before you go nationwide like Dart Appraisal did, you've got to solve all the problems. And so now you have your business person hat on. It's not a salesperson hat anymore. It's a business person hat. And an entrepreneur starting off has to recruit the right people. And it seems like you're learning a lot from everything around you. And then you're getting pressure. And you get pressure as an entrepreneur. It's never going to work out. You hear that a lot. But you're getting pressure to move fast. And you're saying, no, number one client who happens to be my boss, I'm going to fix this business and make it awesome before I spread it out. And if you hadn't have done that, you would have floundered, right? You would have spread out and failed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you've got to really tie it up well. I mean, you've got multiple hats, as you mentioned, and you're doing your best. You can't be perfect, but you're doing your best to make it through these things and begin the process of what are we going to be and what are we going to represent in the marketplace. And our view on the marketplace was it was out of control. It was just there was loan officers demanding things from appraisers, and appraisers in a lot of
you
cases
value integrity and honesty, and your employees value integrity and honesty, and the loan officers need to sell a loan, and they need the house to be worth $150,000, and your appraisal says it's 125 grand, and the deal's going to blow up, and you got these guys jumping over your seat. So a lot of pressure on that integrity that you base your whole life on.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And again, this was in my 20s when I was learning a lot of these things on the fly, but trying to go back to your core values of what are we going to end up with, and how do we create a long-term entity, something that's going to last more than a couple of years, which is a tough thing to do as an entrepreneur. It's tough to make it. I mean, I don't know what the stats are. You'd be better at this than me, Matt, but a lot of businesses don't make it past a couple of years.
90% don't make it past a couple of years.
Yeah, so it's just a very high. This is when I looked at. So we basically were able to get a second client, and we moved on and ended up having about 800 clients in the 90s for about 800 transactions. You can imagine that we really didn't know any client well, but we did this because I did the whole state of Michigan. Right off the bat, I said, I've got to do the whole state of Michigan, because if I just do in the areas we're at now for Oakland, which is what they did in the suburban urban areas, these guys have their buddies. They have their appraiser buddies. They're not going to work with Dart. We're going to be the guy they don't want to work with, because they have a relationship with their guy. And a lot of times that relationship, quite frankly, was a little fuzzy. It kind of blurred the line between.
Well, as an entrepreneur, you have to have a vision and see possible problems. Can't have one client. What if something goes down with that client? Can't be in one area. What if something goes down with that area? Can't be reliant on a customer base that isn't going to use me. So you start to diversify your business, which now you go from a cold calling sales guy to a sales guy that's hiring people to do the detail orientation, to a sales guy that's hiring people to do the detail orientation, to a person thinking about problem solving, using your problem solving skills, using your integrity, to now you've become a business person with a fledgling business, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we had to do. We had to basically
the path of an entrepreneur.
We had to find mortgage companies that were servicing the entire state, which a lot were barely doing that. So they would, if they ordered 20 transactions in a month, maybe one was up north, and we push for that one. So we'd say, give us the one that no one else will do. And we did enough of that through networking. People began to know we were the company to do the entire state. So that's basically how.
And then you went from the state to the Midwest to the nation, right?
Yeah, we built out an entire model to go nationwide. And one of the reasons I found this was one of our clients that was buying from us up north also bought appraisals. They were out of Pennsylvania, and they also bought appraisals from us that were in Metro Detroit, which was a lot easier to manage, quite frankly, because back then, I mean, to make a long story short here, we didn't have digital pictures. We had regular signatures. We couldn't do signatures through like DocuSign or through technology. We didn't have this. We had big printers with a bunch of RAM, and we would, basically print out appraisals on site. And then the appraisers would have to ship us the signature pages and all the pictures. And if we lost these pictures for any reason, they would have to go retake them. And it wasn't like you had the stuff we were doing back then was very difficult to pull off.
Okay, so let's wrap up with just the new role. So you kind of described the growth of the business, and you got Heather there, and she's supporting you. And I think Heather was still.
She actually became an appraiser. Yeah, she became an appraiser. She was a processor, then became an underwriter, and then became. And
she was an appraiser for quite a while, right?
Yeah, she was. I mean, she was an appraiser for, oh boy, I bet you, probably a decade. And it's probably done over 20 15,000 appraisals
Yeah, so
herself. I mean, a lot of appraisals.
Now you have a family business. I know your dad worked there for a long time. I think you ended up buying your dad out, didn't you?
Yeah, we bought my dad when he developed Darton Appraisal. I was a 30% owner. My younger brother was 40, and my mom was 40. And so I said, after working there a few years, working like 100 hours a week, I said, look, I gotta know that this is going to be my business going forward. And quite frankly, it took a couple of years and a lot of stress to finally to buy it out completely. So I actually paid for my brother's college at Arizona State, my little brother, and I also bought a big insurance policy that would basically protect my mom. And so that was the things I cut the deals for my dad.
Okay, so just interesting family business, and actually, Darton's brother lives about 500 yards from my house in Southern California.
Yeah, yes, he does.
California, the awesome beach state. So you've changed your life, right? The business is humongous. You have
no, it wasn't. The business was hitting $5 million for a decade. We couldn't get beyond it. And then after about the first 10 years, and we moved to where we're at 10 million, and we're barely making money. We just, I hadn't really gotten all the numbers worked out, and we're kind of boxed in on how much we sold versus how much we bought for. To make a long story short, we didn't really hit it until the financial bust of 2010. Let's say.
I appreciate, again, now you're up to a red card. Darton gets the first red card on the edge of excellence. Red card. I was talking about today, not way back when.
Oh, yeah. So today,
you caused this to fall over. Today, the business is a very large business. Today, the business is all over the U.S. Today, May 13th, 2024, you've got a full professional executive team that's probably doing a better job than you did. I don't know. It seems like they're doing a better job than you did in the day-to-day. You act as CEO, more like chairman of the board. You spend your time in Florida, and I know you work from Florida, and just caught up in Florida politics and book burning. And then back in Michigan, I know you go back to Michigan. You go to the office once in a while. You spend time in Birmingham and at Blue Lake. But what is life like today? What does it mean to be, entrepreneurs get caught up in that $5 million range where they're tripping over themselves and they're holding the business back. And then they figure out, I need to let the team run. And now you've just let the team completely take over. What did it take to do that? What new life skill do you have to have as an entrepreneur in that, I guess, full CEO stage of entrepreneurship? Not an entrepreneurial CEO, a CEO that lets the team run. What does it take?
Well, I mean, I joined YEO in 1997, right when we went nationwide with Dart. And you meet people that are basically your peer group and other entrepreneurs, and you learn from them. And on a monthly basis, you're getting detailed descriptions of things they're having challenges with or opportunities they're doing well with, or what have you, everything in between that. And you start finding out things about yourself that are in the way of success. And you also find things that you might want to hone in on more. And so all these things you're learning and picking things up. You go to conferences, you join the leadership team through YEO, and you learn even more and more. And so you're constantly evolving. You're continuously improving, and you're just learning from all these different people and then processes, and you learn from your peers that aren't necessarily even doing what you're doing. But the same fundamentals are at play. You've got the finance group, you got the operations side, you've got sales and marketing, and each one of these areas takes a different. In some cases, you can't even develop some of those pieces until you're a certain size or scope, or you're all in on one of those areas, like operations. In the beginning, that's all we had. We had to figure it out, and we had to do a good job, because we weren't going to get order number 2 if order 1 didn't work out. So So that's part of the fun and the excitement and the fear and the anxiety and everything else that comes with running a business. Is you've got these different, in some cases they're really rewarding you, whether it's financially or just good energy or validation. In other areas, they're grinding away at you almost as if it's a fire that you can't put out, and it's just something that you can't get under control. And you're trying so many different things, and that you're constantly pivoting between those things that are validating you and say you're very successful and you've done a great job. And then on the other hand, things that just aren't working out, and our biggest issue in the last 10 years, quite frankly, has been sales. And so we actually bought 5 companies in the last 5 years because we couldn't grow organically. I couldn't get sales guys to make the deep commitments that I needed from them and the follow through. And we ran into all kinds of issues. And we also had a marketplace that, quite frankly, wasn't moving. It was just kind of stagnant. And it was what we call very sticky, which basically means everyone's kind of good with who they've got. And to kind of present them with a new opportunity, it had to be, a real out of the box thing. And quite frankly, we've got a set of rules and regulations that we go by. And so my product wasn't that much different than my competitors. And so they stuck with that. So we had to buy companies to basically continue to expand and really rely more on building or buying versus building internally. We still have a build side. We still have an organic piece, but it's much smaller than our and that's what I do now. I locate companies that I believe are a good fit for us, and we look at buying those. It's been a little off in the last year and a half because rates went up so fast.
Oh yeah,
that everyone's valuations
people aren't getting
down.
mortgages, are they?
Right. So we've basically been on the sidelines, but we're still keeping in touch.
It's a good time to buy.
Quite a few people. Well, not really, because a lot of people that we're talking to, they're waiting for their numbers to get good so that they get the valuation they feel they're deserved.
So you're buying strong companies. It's a good time to buy companies that aren't strong. So I'm just going to stop for a second.
That's true. If you buy weaker companies, that's a different deal.
Yeah. So you have a thirst for learning. As an entrepreneur, you have a thirst for learning. There's a vulnerability that you talk about in EO, which one of the values of EO, or YEO, it used to be called Young Entrepreneurs Organization, then everybody got old, is that thirst for learning. The vulnerability of taking advice, the vulnerability of sharing your stories. That's what makes EO work, right? Is that people are willing to share their deepest, darkest secrets and their embarrassing moments and their stories so other people can benefit. And then they're also willing to help out so other people can benefit. It's a very selfless peer group. It's a lifting peer group. And I find most entrepreneurs are lifting others. But if you don't, there's a process to get into these groups. And if you're not the sharing type, and if you're not the loving type, and if you're not the concerned type, and if you're not thirsty to get better, it's just not the right fit for you. So you're got this thirst for learning, you're leveraging your peer group, you're learning from others, you're learning about yourself. Same time, you're totally transforming. And there's this entrepreneurial character trait. Starts with integrity, what you started the podcast with. Your definition of excellence is really integrity. It continues with problem solving, and you got to see the future problems. You talked about the vision of an entrepreneur, seeing future problems and solving them before they happen. Your yellow pad with all those problems that your dad didn't know about. And the whole time you're leveraging your strengths and bringing people in to fill in the blanks like you did with Heather. I mean, she's great at everything that you and I aren't great at. Jill's great at everything you and I aren't great at. So it worked in marriage. It worked in the business. And I know we're running out of time. I got to ask you that there was a sacrifice you made in your 20s that enabled all this to happen. And by the way, do you or do you not have a pontoon boat?
I have 2 pontoon boats.
Do you or do you not have like a Mastercraft or a ski boat like that?
I do.
Do you or do you not have like that silver aluminum type boat there as well?
No.
Okay, so you have 3 boats.
Boat.
You have 3 boats at the lake. So you thought I was talking about Florida, where you used to have 3 boats. Right. Now you have one gigantic boat in Florida. And I just need to ask this. New Mambas, the snake, black mamba, does it make it up to the 30th floor of the high rise, or is Heather only at risk of being bitten by snakes when she's walking on the beach?
They only go to the 12th floor, so she's good.
Heather, you're safe, but don't go outside, Heather.
Yeah.
There's snakes everywhere. And at the lake, there's got to be snakes everywhere. I got to ask you one last question before I let you go. What was that sacrifice you made? You didn't seem to make too many in college, so it's not like you worked really hard and skipped spring break or
that's true.
Fraternity party.
No doubt about it. I had a pretty easygoing life until I got my first job, and then I was all in. You know,
what sacrifice that you at the time were like, I can't make this sacrifice. I need a toga.
My belief when you're in your 20s is that is the framework, that the foundation for who you will be. And that's one of the reasons I left Colorado. At that point, this is before the boom of Colorado in the last few, let's say decade or 15 years, 30 years ago, I went to school in Colorado, and it was slower. It was just a slow, methodical kind of deal. I needed more, not New York, where it's just all, but I need a Midwest kind of like work ethic. I needed to get back to that. And I would just say that when you're in your 20s, you're evolving, you're vulnerable, but that's okay. You know, same things that I am today. You know, you tell people, I don't know what I'm doing. You know, I have no idea what's going on with this. I have no idea what's going on with that. Stay with that, and then just put it all in there and put it on the line. You know, I mean, when I wanted my second phone, yeah, you know, so my belief is that you just work. I had friends that took big breaks after college, and they really never got successful. I mean, they just kind of like faded out. You know, they also, they just kind of got involved with all these leisurely things, I guess I would call it. And in the beginning, I think you got to just kind of put yourself in a box and just grind it out and begin and find out what you're all about, you know? So I would just say that there's no doubt the 20s to me are the most important time in finding out what you want, finding out if that second job, if that second career of mine, appraisal, was not some of the same fundamentals as my first that I really enjoyed, I would have got out of it. But I hitched on that thing, being the middleman, being part of getting both sides to work together. That fit me. So find out what it is about you that really gets you excited and motivated. Because if it doesn't, you're not going to want to go to work. And if you're not wanting to go to work, then you need to start over and find something that gives you energy and gives you that transitional time to basically get through that decade, of your 20s.
Well, man, I hope your kids and my kids make it to the last 1 minute of this hour and 10-minute long podcast, the longest podcast we've ever recorded and the least professional. That is some great advice. How you launch at 21 and 22 matters. How you come out of the gate matters. That first 10 years, you're putting deposits in your resume, in your life. Put as much in the bank now as possible because you're going to get interest on it. It matters. And Darton Case, you made it. You made it to the end of this crazy podcast. You did a really good job. I got to say right now, this podcast blows doors off the Steve Kearley podcast because
of course
we were out of control, especially me. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you for making time. Thank you for inviting me to Florida, the crappy California, over and over and over again. Thank you for sharing your excellence on the edge of excellence.
You got it. Have a great day. And thanks for spending time with me. I appreciate it.